video games have been around for a little while. Some of them even long enough to be considered relics. But for real, video games have been around a lot longer than you might have guessed. Let's take a trip back to 1952 for a moment, folks, to the release of the hit game OXO, which was essentially tic-tac-toe. Most people will tell you that Pong was actually the first video game created, but it was actually created in 1958, whereas OXO was created in 1952. To most people, this was just useless trivia, but this is the stepping stone for the development of the first video games ever made. Over the years, the way video games have been made and the type of games to be produced has changed drastically. Some more than others. Pong may not have been the first one made, but it sure was quite a game changer for the medium. Yeah. The simplicity and challenge of the game made it quite a hit at the time, and it's probably why it is still such a popular pastime today. From this point to the 70s, games remained relatively simplistic, with straightforward, easy to understand concepts. These jump-started the popularity of arcade games in the 1980s, with games that were based around simple concepts such as Pac-Man, where you play as a yellow thingy and you try to escape from the ghost thingies and get the coin. Yeah, let's go! Or Paperboy, where you deliver newspapers, or Centipede, where you shoot laser beams at stuff. Okay, you get the gist. Go from A to B, get the coin or whatever, move on. Moving on, the arcade scene really stepped up their game in the 1990s. The new decade ushered in numerous games that have become certified classics, from games like Doom, Half-Life, GoldenEye 007, Super Mario 64, Mortal Kombat, Crash Bandicoot, and many more. This was truly a redefining era for video games. The 2000s. Man, the 2000s were a wacky time, and not just in video games. I mean, people in general. Like, whoever thought these were a good idea? Huh? Who? It seems like most people were just experimenting with new trends and trying to figure themselves out. Video games weren't really different. This was the era in which many new styles of games were being experimented with, and new ideas for ways to adapt the medium were coming up. As a result of this, the games of this era were a bit of a mixed bag. Some were gems, like and others probably shouldn't have left the pre-production stage. Many developers took advantage of the rapidly advancing technology in video games, allowing them to make the games more complex and challenging for the player. Where you used to have simple obstacles to overcome, you now had complex scenarios to play through and figure out. This was also around the time when games started to lean more heavily into different ways of storytelling. All in all, this decade did a lot for expanding on how video games can be played, and also served as a blueprint for the next generation of games. Okay, yeah, so the world didn't end in 2012, meaning I guess we got a new generation of games to cover. Personally, I think this is where video games have really hit their stride. A lot of the best games from recent years have taken concepts and ideas from previous generations and put a new spin on them or adapted them for a more modern take. Take Hollow Knight, a 2D platformer that focuses heavily on exploration and atmospheric storytelling. The map layout is reminiscent of older platformers from the 80s like Zelda 2 for the NES or Castlevania. Games such as Katana Zero or Hotline Miami are even able to capture the style and look of classic Metroidvania type games, while still being a refreshing take on the genre. Heck, even games like Sekiro or Elden Ring have their roots in previous generations, going back to Demon's Souls in 2009, which doesn't sound like that long ago, but that was 13 years ago, so there's a fun reality check for you. Anyways, getting back on track, oh yeah, some of the best games of our generation have been inspired by older games, because it is a tried and tested method. I mean, it's a craft that has been honed and refined for over decades of trial and error. Now, older games may not be as accessible for newer generations to experience, as most of the platforms they're on are hard to come by nowadays, but I think that the newer wave of games does a great job at adapting and taking the best parts of previous generations and reworking it for a more modern setting. The video games of today are quite literally the result of something that has been years in the making. This has been your host, Craig McGuffin. Good night, folks.